XSL, the Extensible Style Sheet Language. So what's the motivation for the Extensible Style Sheet Language, XSL? Well, first of all, it's a recommendation. So the motivation should be, okay, if there is a standard, what is this all for? Why do we have that standard? Is it good for me in my career as a web engineer to help me do things easier, faster, better? So what is this XSL thing all about? And the idea behind XSL is when we are talking about XML documents and Sachs parser or DOM parser, then in many cases, we're talking about how can I transform one XML document into another representation, either into another XML document, or how can I transform data out of an XML document into a different representation, maybe from a data representation into a visual representation. So for instance, from an XML document into an HTML document, or from a set of data points into a graphic presenting some graphs, some charts, whatever. And the W3C saw that, and the different users or members of the W3C saw that when we are dealing with a document object model, the programs that we are writing are often very much the same. But the problem is, if you write some code using the document object model, then you have to compile the codes, you have to make the code less reusable. You implement some idea on how to transform XML document into some other representation. You use some code, Java, C#, Pascal, Oberon, whatever kind of programming language you think of, Lisp or Prolog, it doesn't matter. It is the whole knowledge of the transformation is sitting in this piece of code, which is not so, let's say, independent or reusable like the XML document, for instance, is. So the question is, can we have a tool which allows us to transform XML documents into another representation without using some programming language, but by using some XML, some XML document that specifies the mapping? And if you have that, well, then we are done. Then we have kind of a programmer's support for mapping XML documents into other representation. And that's what XSL is all about. So the idea is we have an XML document and we want to have the representation. In most of the cases, there are different ways on dealing with that scenario. So we have an XML document, and at some point in time, some browser companies thought of, okay, let's support XML developers by applying XML documents together with CSS style sheets, which we already know and love from the HTML world, and bring these things together. So we use a CSS style sheet to specify how certain XML elements should be shown or displayed. Yeah? So this was one approach. Another one was, okay, let's have some kind of XSL style sheet, which is more XML-oriented way of the idea of the style sheet. Instead of cascading style sheet, we have the XSL style sheet, and we have a dedicated display engine, maybe part of a browser, that can map the XML document plus the specific style sheet rules, the XML related style sheet rules, and display that in a whatever fancy way. Another approach to deal with notation of XML is to use some kind of transformation. That kind of transformation is called XSL transformation. And the XSL transformation works like this. It uses the XML document. The XML document is brought together with an XSL transformation document. Both together are executed with a XSL tool, with some XSL code, and that might then be transformed into XHTML or HTML code or some other kind of code, which is then presented maybe together with some style sheet in the web browser. And finally, the XML document might also be used together with an XSL transformation to transform the document data into some other XML document. So these are the different scenarios which we are talking about, and we are very, very clearly looking at these last two ones, the XSL transformation, which we will talk about in more detail in the next couple of slides. Okay, so one more time, we have our contact data XML document with Peter Parter. So this XML document we want to transform into another XML document, for instance, into a document which we could provide to some processing application to print an address field for our letter that we want to send to Peter Parter. So transforming this XML document with root name person into a new XML document with root name Anschrift, Vorname, Nachname might be the same. The other things are also the same, but a different order, for instance. How is this working? Well, it works with the XSL specification. The XSL specification, as I said, is a standard, but it's not just one standard. It's a family of specifications, a family of standards. And that means XSL is extremely powerful, and there is a lot to learn from it, from the different specifications that come with the XSL family of specifications. The most important ones that we have to take care of and which we are focusing on in this lecture are the XSL transformation, XSLT, and XML parse language, XParse. There's also another specification called XSL formatting objects, XSLFO, which is especially interesting if you look into creating PDF files or graphic files where you want to specify the representation of data in a very specific and detailed way. So most importantly is, of course, the transformation and the parse language, XParse. XParse is extremely prominent because XParse is used in many different other specifications. So if you want to learn from this XSL family of specifications only one, then you should learn XParse. But as you want to learn more, you will also learn XSLT, of course, because this is also very relevant, very powerful. We always have some task in our exams for that. So that is what you really have to look at. XSL formatting objects will also be addressed. It's also interesting from the visual experience point of view. But for the normal data transformation work, XSL transformation, XML parse language, XParse are the key concepts. Okay, so let's take a look into the style sheet specification. What is a style sheet and how does it look like? Well, first of all, we have the root element, that is XSL, the namespace here, and the element name is style sheet. Very simple, using this namespace here, ws3.org 1999 XSL transform. A lot of people also mix up the different terms, talking about a transformation instead of a style sheet, or an XSLT file instead of a style sheet. That doesn't matter. It's one and the same thing. It's important for you only that you know the difference, that the style sheet is a container for the transformations. Okay, so when we're talking about an XSL style sheet, we are talking about the container that contains a set of rules, or to be more precise, template rules. So the XSLT transformation rules, they describe how the original source XML document is used together with the template rules which are applied to build up a new XML document, or to build up, to be more precise, to build up the target representation. And the process of that algorithm is very simple. The input is the XML document, or to be more precise, the XML source tree. That is the input vocabulary. And the source tree is processed in the way that the source tree is transformed by this template to create an XML result tree. So the result tree is a result of applying all these templates in the context of our input vocabulary, our input document, our source tree. As soon as we have the XML result tree constructed, the next step is to output the result tree by formatting the result tree, which might be done by specific formatters or other ways of serializing the XML result tree into whatever kind of format. Okay, so obviously the interesting thing is the template rules that transform parts of the source tree into a result tree. And that is called XSLT, the XSL transformations. That is a language is specified in XML. So it's a kind of a programming language, if you like, specified in XML that describes certain transformations which are applied to the source tree to create a transformation, some transformation result, which is then put into the result tree. So here you have such a kind of transformation rule, a template rule. That specific rule is a template, exactly a template with a special meaning. We will also see a couple of other transformation rules. So here you see we have a template and we have some rule that describe what has to be matched in the source tree so that this template is applied and the result is put into the result tree. So we have to search in our source, in the input XML document, for an element name called source element. If you find that, then in our result tree, we will put this element and this content model, this string here, or this characters, called H1 representation, end of H1. So this is XML as output, but if you look closely at it, it could also be HTML, right? So H1 is an element known from HTML, but H1 could also be an element known from our own kind of XML grammar that we specify. So the source tree has, luckily, that kind of source element included. Yeah, so this single element is our XML document, a very short one, containing only one closed element. That is the source tree, the XML document that we use as input. And the template is applied because the source element match is given, or the match that this template is looking for is found here in this one single element. And therefore, there is an intermediate result, the result of that specific template, which is H1 representation end of H1, as you can see here as well. And after that, we do not have any other templates to execute. There's no other match, and therefore there's no other transformation. So we are at the end of the transformation from the source tree processing to the result tree. So we have this here as our result tree, and this is then in the end also the final result, H1 representation and H1. Oops, that was too fast. So here we have the processing model, the algorithm specified in more detail as I have explained it a minute ago. We will talk about that processing model in more detail using the template approach and using other transformation elements, which we will discuss in a minute. This algorithm is also part of the specification of the XSL family of specifications. And the homework here is find this algorithm in the specification and take a look in the specification, read the specification there about this algorithm to get a deeper understanding of it. And then we are starting to use all these kinds of XSL templates and animation elements, which we are now discussing in more detail. So, as I said, the template element is the starting point of animations and starts the algorithm of the style sheet, as we can see here. So usually when we are talking about an XSLT template, you will find this kind of specific template that is executed first because it matches slash. And slash is notation for the root of an XML document. This slash, we will talk about the slash in more detail later on because it's not just an abbreviation, it's part of a language for specifying search terms in an XML document, and that language is called XPath. So you see here, we have our first contact with XPath, and as I said, XPath is so super important. You will see it everywhere. So we could also start using with XPath, but I think it's more important to start with the template first. So let's take a look here into the different kinds of tools or programming approaches that we can use in XSLT to specify or to manipulate the algorithm, which we saw on the other slide, in creating the result tree. So we can ask, for instance, the algorithm to apply all kinds of templates. We can ask the algorithm to apply templates that select in the source tree certain patterns, certain things that we are searching for, like certain element names. And we can also create a loop, such as a for loop or while loop, and say for each element or for each node which we find. And here we have the search pattern, the select, the search entry. For each of the nodes that we find by applying this search pattern, do something with it by the following commands to the source tree and apply these commands for transforming the source tree or the part of the source tree into the result tree. We will have a demo in the tutorials on that. Let's have a first kind of sample and description of, or let's say, algorithm in that sense on how to apply these rules as soon as we know how to search in this XML document.